What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We continue with our 2022 predictions. The Baylor Bears are up next. Team that had a great year last year, a surprise team. I know they surprised me. I was not expecting this team to be anywhere near the Big 12 championship. I just wasn't. I totally missed the mark, and they proved me wrong for sure. It's very impressive what Dave Aranda has come in there and done, and I think expectations should be pretty high again this year, although some of the predictions here not necessarily agreeing with that. The FBI has them at 7.9 and 4.3, so about 8-4, which is a good year, but not quite as good as last year, of course. Athlon has them at 9-3, a little bit better. The over-under's at 7.5. That means 7-5, 8-4. That's the most likely record for this team, according to Vegas. I'm surprised the numbers are not a little bit higher, especially the over-under. I thought they might be in that 8.5 range, not 7.5. A 1.5 game difference between Athlon and Vegas there. So that's interesting looking at this Baylor team. Defensively, I think they're going to be very strong. They're not super deep, so watch out for injuries potentially slowing this Baylor team down next year or this upcoming season. They still haven't kind of added to this roster at the level that they need to, in my opinion, to have the depth to where they can, sustain a lot of injuries. So I think that could be a concern. But the defense, I think, will be strong. The offense should be pretty good. Blake Shapen, of course, what a story he was taking over at quarterback for them and winds up winning the job. He looked pretty good at the end of last season. I think they're in good shape there. Got some decent receivers around him as a group. And then the running back room is going to be pretty young. Not a lot of experience there, so we'll see what they get. But I think this is a team that will lean on their defense again in 2022. Here is the schedule. You can see they open up with Albany, and that's going to be a win. So we'll go ahead and put that one in there. No problem there for that one. They'll play BYU up next on the road. Pretty tough place to play. I believe they are playing at like 10:15 Eastern time. We already have the time for that game. That's going to be a late night game. Not exactly the Pac-12 after dark, but it is Baylor at BYU. A very experienced BYU team. I think there's just too much going for them in this game. Playing at home, late night game. It'll be a good one, a close one. But both teams pretty similar. Go with the home field advantage. I think the home field advantage gets BYU the win. Baylor loses, but then they bounce back to beat Texas State. So I've got this team starting 2-1. Next game is on the road at Iowa State. Not very high on Iowa State. I've talked about that several times. A lot of us overrated them last year, obviously, and now they lose some production from that team, some key players. So I'm not very high on Iowa State. I think Baylor's able to go on the road and get a win in that one. A rematch from the Big 12 championship game last year, Baylor versus Oklahoma State. This one is basically a coin flip. I trust Baylor's defense a little bit more. I think they're a little bit more complete. Oklahoma State has some holes in the secondary. Offensively, maybe Oklahoma State has a slight advantage. They're pretty similar. I think this is a very even game. And again, when it's a close game, home field advantage usually is what I'm going to go with. So I'll say Baylor wins this game, and they start off 4-1. Next game, this is tricky right here. On the road at West Virginia on a Thursday night. How many times do we see ranked teams go on the road on a Thursday night or a Friday night and get upset? It happens all the time in college football. They do get a bye week before this game. That's going to help them out a little bit, I think. West Virginia is going to be, a pretty good team, not a great team. When I look at them, I have a hard time with this one. I think that this is going to be a tough game for Baylor. But at the end of the day, when I did my predictions and I put my record out there for Baylor, and I kind of moved some of these games around, this wound up being a win for Baylor. So I did have them beating West Virginia, but that's one to circle. We might want to trade that, call that a loss, and give them a win in another game, perhaps the BYU game, because that is a scary game right there. That is a tricky game, and we'll see what happens. But I'm going to go with Baylor in that one. Kansas up next on October the 22nd. Home game for Baylor. Kansas will be a decent team this year. A lot of production coming back. I said this before in some of the other videos. I don't think Kansas is going to be Kansas bad, but they will still not be a great team. Baylor at home will be able to take care of business in this one. They improved to 6-1. Road game at Texas Tech right before playing Oklahoma could be a tricky one here as well. Look, West Virginia and Texas Tech, those are the two games I think if you're a Baylor fan, you got to watch out for. If they lose those two games, the season could kind of unravel a little bit with still Oklahoma and Texas on the road down the stretch. But I think this team, I saw enough from Dave Aranda last year with what he was able to do with this team. I think he'll have them ready to go on the road and beat Texas Tech, so I've got them at 7-1. Oklahoma up next on the road. Very tough matchup here. Revenge game for Oklahoma. The Sooners will have a lot of firepower. If their defense can do what we think they can do under Brent Venables, they're going to be a very dangerous team. This will be maybe a little bit more of a low-scoring game, depending on how that defense does play out for Oklahoma. Probably a close game, but Oklahoma is going to be really focused. I say probably a close game, but it also could be a game where we think it's going to be close, and Oklahoma is just so focused. It's a revenge game. They go in there and they win easily. So that is a possibility. I could see that happening. It's hard to say for sure how the game will play out. Of course, it's in November. A lot of things can happen from the start of the season to this game, but I do think Oklahoma will win, whether it's close or not. And I think Baylor goes to 7-2. They play Kansas State after that. Pretty good Kansas State team. A lot of veteran players on their roster. Not a team that's going to be easy to beat. This should be a close game, but playing at home, I'm going to give Baylor the advantage. We'll say the Bears win this one. Next game is against TCU, a home game for Baylor. TCU, a good team, should have an explosive offense. This will be another really close game. This is a tough stretch here from Oklahoma down to Texas. I know Kansas State, TCU, both of these games are at home, but these are quality teams. And you look at West Virginia on the road and Texas Tech on the road. This schedule is pretty tricky for Baylor, and I guess that's why the over-under maybe is as low as it is. But at the end of the day, I think Baylor's defense will be good enough to slow down this TCU offense enough to get the win. Home field advantage might be the difference. I'm going to say Baylor wins that game. They go 9-2. And then we finish up with Texas on the road. That offense for Texas is going to be very, very good. The Baylor defense, though, again, should be good. That'll be a fun matchup to watch. How much can they slow down this Texas offense? Will it be enough? I think it's going to be tough, and I think because it's on the road, that's enough for me to lean towards Texas in this one. So I've got Baylor losing this final game and going 9-3. But I'm telling you right now, we may look really stupid on Baylor because of just the way their schedule sets up. And maybe they overachieved last year. Maybe they were overrated. I don't think they were, but maybe they were. And they do lose some key players from that team. There are just so many opportunities. You look at Iowa State, West Virginia, Texas Tech, all on the road. They could lose those games. Kansas State and TCU at home, they could lose maybe one of those games. So it wouldn't shock me if Baylor winds up having a very average season, a 6-6 or 7-5 type season. But again, I mentioned this before. What I saw from this team, what Dave Aranda has been able to do, it gives me confidence in them. I think that they will be able to manage this schedule, and I think they will be able to get to 9-3. We could miss the mark on Baylor, though. I'm telling you, I don't see them doing better than 9-3 because of this schedule, but I could see them maybe doing worse, and that's going to be interesting to see. Could they be one of the more overrated teams coming into this year? I don't think that they are, but I've been wrong before. I might be wrong again. My prediction for Baylor in 2022 is that they will go 9-3.